Use a table of values to sketch graphs of f of x equals the absolute value of x plus 3 and g of x equals the absolute value of x plus 3. Let's start with f of x. Let's make a table of values, x and then f of x. I'm going to pick a few values, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I am going to evaluate f for each of those. Let's start with -3. Let's make a little bit of room to do the calculations. We've got the absolute value of -3 plus 3. The absolute value of -3 is positive 3. So we've got 3 plus 3, which gives us 6. Let's try -2. The absolute value of -2 is positive 2, and 2 plus 3 gives us 5. Let's look at -1. The absolute value of -1 is positive 1, and 1 plus 3 gives us 4. The absolute value of 0 is 0, and 0 plus 3 is 3. The absolute value of 1 is 1, 1 plus 3 is 4. The absolute value of 2 is 2, 2 plus 3 is 5. And the absolute value of 3 is 3, and 3 plus 3 is 6. So we can plot our points. We've got -3, 6, -2, 5, -1, 4, 0, 3, 1, 4, 2, 5, and 3, 6. We have already seen a graph of the absolute value of x, and we know that it is a V-shape. In this case, we get a similar V-shape, but the graph is higher than it was when it was just the absolute value of x. So in a way, and we're going to talk about this more later, this graph is the graph of just f of x, but shifted upwards. So this 3 that we've added has shifted the graph upwards. Again, we're going to talk about that later. Right now, the whole point is to get comfortable using tables of values to sketch graphs of functions. But that's just a little bit of a look ahead. So this was our f of x equals the absolute value of x plus 3. Let's take a look now at g of x. We'll again make a table of values. I'm going to pick the same values for x, and we'll see what this gives us. We've got the absolute value of x plus 3. So in this case, the absolute value of -3 plus 3, that's the absolute value of 0, which is 0. Here it'll be the absolute value of -2 plus 3. That's the absolute value of 1, which is 1. Here we've got the absolute value of -1 plus 3. That's the absolute value of 2, which is 2. We've got the absolute value of 0 plus 3, which is the absolute value of 3, which is 3. We've got the absolute value of 1 plus 3, which is the absolute value of 4, which is 4. The absolute value of 2 plus 3, which is the absolute value of 5, which is 5. And the absolute value of 3 plus 3, which is the absolute value of 6, which is 6. Let's plot these points and see if that shows us what the graph will look like. We have -3, 0, -2, 1, -1, 2, 0, 3, 1, 4, 2, 5, and 3, 6. This looks like it's going to be a line, but we've seen already two examples where we know that an absolute value gives us a V shape. So instead of just drawing in a line and assuming that we have all of the correct points, all of the important points, I'm going to try and see what's going on over here, because it might be that we end up with a V shape somewhere on the left. So let's try a couple more values. Let's try -4 and -5. Now here we've got -4 plus 3, and that's going to give us -1. The absolute value of -1 is +1, and that gives us the point -4, 1, which does now look like we're getting a little bit of a V. Let's do -5. Inside the absolute values, -5 plus 3 gives us -2. The absolute value of -2 is +2, so that gives us the point -5, 2. And now we can see that this is going to be a V shape, just like the other absolute value equations. This is going to be g of x equals the absolute value of x plus 3. It's important when we're making tables of values to note that the points that we end up with might not be enough to give us a full picture of what the final graph is going to look like. We can do our best to pick some values of x that give us points elsewhere, that give us a clearer image, especially if we think that there's something wrong with the points that we have to start with. Now, one more comment before we move on. In this case, we have the same V shape that we had with the absolute value of x, but instead of being centered at the origin, it was moved to the left 3. It was shifted. So here, by adding 3 inside the absolute value, we've shifted the graph to the left, whereas when we added 3 on the outside, it shifted the graph upward. These are called transformations of functions, and we're going to be looking at these pretty extensively in just a little bit.